I'm a 21-year-old introvert. I am socially awkward and find it hard to mingle. I spend most of my time alone, so this year I decided to go bar hopping in the hopes of meeting new friends. I left my apartment and walked down the street. The streets were alive with the promise of a new year, neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement, laughter spilling from every doorway. I felt like a ghost among the cheers and laughter of people walking by, my solitude amplified by their joy. Determined to change that, I ducked into the first bar I saw, its dim interior lit by a flickering neon open sign. I told myself this was the year I'd break out of my shell and leave loneliness behind. I ordered a drink while scoping the crowd for someone, anyone, to talk to. That's when a man approached me. He was handsome, his smile easy, his eyes dark but friendly. "Alone tonight?" he asked, sliding onto the bar stool beside me. His voice was smooth, oozing with confidence. He wasn't pushy. I liked him, so we exchanged names. I found myself relaxing, charmed by his quick wit and the way he seemed genuinely interested in me. One drink turned into two, then three and four. I should have noticed how he steered the conversation, how he subtly kept me drinking while barely touching his own. But I was too eager to connect, too naive to see the warning signs. "Let's go somewhere quieter," he suggested after an hour. My heart fluttered at the invitation. Stupidly, I agreed. We walked out together, his hand lightly guiding me by the elbow. The cold night air sobered me a little, and a faint unease crept in as he led me toward a car parked in a shadowy side street. I hesitated, glancing around at the empty alley. "It's just a short drive," he said, his tone reassuring. Before I could respond, he opened the passenger door and something in his expression shifted. A flash of impatience, a tightening of his jaw. That's when I felt the unmistakable spike of fear. I turned to leave, but his hand clamped onto my arm, vice-like and unyielding. I opened my mouth to scream, but his other hand was already on me, covering my mouth with a cloth that reeked of chemicals. The world tilted, and everything went dark. When I came to, I was crammed into a small, suffocating space, the air heavy with the metallic tang of rust and oil. My head throbbed, and it took a moment to piece together where I was. The trunk of a car. Panic set in. I kicked and thrashed, my boots slamming against the walls of the trunk. "Help!" I screamed, my voice raw and muffled by the layers of steel and upholstery. The car engine roared beneath me, drowning out my cries. My hands searched blindly in the dark, fingers scraping over rough carpeting and cold metal. I found a latch and tugged desperately, but it wouldn't budge. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, the confined space pressing in on me like a coffin. The car slowed, then stopped. I froze, every nerve ending screaming. Doors slammed and footsteps crunched on gravel. My heart thundered in my chest as the trunk popped open, flooding my prison with bright moonlight. Before I could react, he was on me, dragging me out with brutal strength. I kicked and screamed, but he was relentless, slamming me against the car to keep me still. He pulled a blindfold from his pocket and tied it tightly around my eyes. Darkness again. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he hissed, his breath hot and sour against my ear. I bit down a sob, my body trembling as he forced me to walk, his hand gripping my arm like a shackle. We walked over gravel and up a few steps. The air was cold and damp, tinged with the musty scent of decay. I heard the door creak open, and then my boots scuffed over uneven wooden floors, each step accompanied by the creak of old boards. A door slammed behind us, the sound reverberating through the empty space. "Sit," he ordered, shoving me into a chair. Ropes scratched against my wrists as he bound my hands tightly behind me. The blindfold didn't come off, but I heard him moving around, his heavy footsteps echoing in what sounded like a huge empty room. I strained to listen, every sound magnified in the silence. The scrape of metal, the clink of glass. Tools, I realized, my stomach lurching at the thought. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios, each more horrifying than the last. "Why are you doing this?" I choked out, my voice barely more than a whisper. He didn't answer. Instead, he laughed. A low, horrible sound that sent a fresh wave of terror through me. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe it was only seconds. Time lost all meaning in the dark. I was seated on a rough sofa, my hands tied behind my back. My wrists burned from the rope, but I kept twisting and pulling, desperate to loosen the knots without him noticing. My fingertips were numb, my shoulders screaming in protest. Finally, I felt the rope give, just a little. Adrenaline surged, so I started working faster, ignoring the pain. Then with one final tug, my hands came free. I waited, holding my breath, listening for any sign that he'd noticed. He was humming softly to himself. Gathering every ounce of courage, I slipped the blindfold off, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. The room wasn't as I'd imagined. It was cramped and filthy, the walls streaked with dirt and something darker. Lined up on a table near the corner were different-sized knives, a hammer, and a roll of duct tape. He had his back to me, his focus on a bottle of something he was pouring. My heart pounded as I grabbed the heaviest object within reach, a rusted pipe leaning against the wall. I crept forward, my pulse deafening in my ears. I was sure he heard my heartbeat. When I was close enough, I swung with everything I had. The pipe connected with a sickening thud, and he crumpled to the ground, crying out in pain. I didn't wait to see if he was unconscious. I ran, stumbling out of the house into the night. The woods across from the house was dark, but I didn't stop. My only thought was to escape. I don't remember how I found help, only the distant sound of sirens and the warmth of a blanket draped over my shoulders. I told the police everything, every harrowing detail, but part of me knew the fear would never truly leave me. Even now, safe and surrounded by light, I can still hear his laughter echoing in my mind.